So my question is, in being the only one in the room, I've read a bunch of Quit Lit. I'm sure that you are familiar and either have read or even probably friendly with many of Quit Lit authors. You are, as far as I know, one of the only ones, if not the only one. What's your perspective on the recovery space and community right now, when there are so many individuals out there who do look like you, who have similar experiences to you, but their stories aren't actually being told? I mean, it's one of the reasons why I started Stacking Days. I have my perspectives on it, but you've been sober now for 16 years. So what you saw in 2008, relative to where we are today, that's a bunch of data points to be able to pull from.
Yeah.
So what's your POV on all of this?
Um, Books are, I mentioned that I didn't finish ninth grade and I never went to college. Books have been my education. I don't have a formal education, but I do consider myself to be educated because I've always read. The only way I ever know how to navigate anything is through books, the books that I've read. I come up against a situation, I can, go back in my head to see like how this person handled it in whatever book I read about it, and that's the path I'll take.
Mm,
When in 2008, when I was before I checked myself into treatment, when I was looking to figure out another way, because I'd always figured out other ways to deal with what was, I was struggling with, I tried to discreetly kind of comb bookshelves in my neighborhood looking for books about what I was going through written by people who look like me. And as you mentioned, there I found none. I found almost nothing but white women. There were a few white men. I I didn't find any Asian women. I didn't find any Latina women. I did not find any black women. I didn't find any men on that side either. I didn't find Asian men, Latina men, or black men. And I thought maybe I'm looking in the wrong bookstore. Like maybe, and it wasn't so much like in 2008. It wasn't like all Amazon all the time. Like bookstores were really where it was at. I looked at libraries, I really looked around and I was pretty stunned to find that there was nothing. And I did buy and check out some books written by white women that were really helpful to me, but not helpful in the same way as if that they had been written by someone who looked like me, because it is a different experience. Uh, when one is othered anyway, and then going through disease or whatever, or grappling with a situation where one's othered anyway, right? Because I'm othered because I can't stop drinking. I'm othered because I can't stop taking pills. I'm othered because I'm a mother doing these things.
mhm.
And then I'm othered because I'm the only black person in the space with these issues. So it was a lot, and I kind of piecemealed myself, a way to navigate this through the books that I found. And in 20, I don't know, not 2012, it was probably 2018 or so when I first started looking at like, am I going to write a book about my life? I started looking on the bookshelves again. This time I did have Amazon to comb through, and I still found nothing. And that's not to say that there aren't books written by Asian people, black people, Latina people. I'm going to close my curtain because I think my there's a crane here, really big crane.
All good.
Anyway, um, there are books written by people of color, and they're really wonderful books. What I'm talking about are books that are currently on shelves,
Hmm.
um, and that's really a big deal. You can find something that's been out of print for a while. You might get lucky and find something that was big in the 70s, but as far as like circa 2024, um, there just aren't any. Jessica Hoppe has a book coming out um, this summer. I think she has it's
Mm.
coming out in July, and that's, she's Latina and she's telling her story of recovery in her family, which is amazing. There's my book that came out last March of 2023. um and then you have a lot of people who self-published, right? And so their books are out there, but you're not going to walk into a bookstore and find those books on shelves typically.
Hmm.
So the pickings are very slim. And the reasoning, I think, for that is that publishing houses just don't think they'll make money. They're making a lot of money from white women who are buying these books, and other people besides white women are buying these white women's books because they're they're like, this is the only,
That's
this
all
is
that's
the
all
only
on the
thing out
menu.
there. Yeah. And so publishing houses are like, if we did a black book, about the black experience, like who's really going to buy that? Because typically this isn't who we're seeing coming to the table to buy these books. And so Stash, I thought, was really important. One, Simon and Schuster and Atria, they took a big gamble on an unknown memoirist who was writing, a black woman writing about her addiction. And addiction memoirs are the hardest thing to sell anyway.
Hmm.
They just are, unless they're celebrity memoirs. They're just, people have to be interested in you. And if they don't know who you are, then they're probably not going to buy your book.
Hmm.
And to give me a six-figure advance for it, which is what they did, and they were very generous, and they put a lot of money in marketing behind Stash. And I really think they wanted to test the waters and see if a book like this would do well. And my hope is that because of their experience with my book, not just Simon and Schuster and Atria, but all the big five publishing houses, Hachette, HarperCollins, Random House, I hope they all start to look at this as like, wow, this was successful. There is a market for Black women's stories. And I'll just tell you one more thing. The irony is that, 10 to 1, the comments I get, the people that show up in my book events are white women.
Hmm.
They're coming out. They have went hard for Stash, and I'm so grateful to them. But I still don't know that word of it is reaching these black markets where we hear a lot of talk about addiction, but very little discussion about recovery.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I'm curious that in within that ecosystem, the reason why it is not making it into those markets, into markets where our people are, is probably because they're not accustomed to marketing into those communities, and it's
Yeah.
all it literally is like a literary desert, literary desert. So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy when, like,
Mhm.
obviously, no, black folks aren't going to buy your books because you don't sell to them.
Right.
So I for that reason, I'm glad that you put it out there. I'm glad that Simon and Schuster backed it, and it sounds like it's still making incredible headway. um
Yeah. Yeah. There the New York Times really helped. Each time, there were 3 times last year where the New York Times featured it,
hmm,
and because of that, it got these big bumps and got it into more hands, and it's in other places like Elle Magazine, um, Oprah Daily featured it twice. So there were other places that did, and, it's it's quite surreal, right, to have that out there, and it's not really me that they're featuring, but it's my book, which is my story.
right.
So that's interesting. But I also get a lot of black women who find it and kind of come to me with an attitude like, "How come I never knew this was out here?"
Mm.
And I'm like, "I don't know. I've been trying." I'm a little Instagram going,
Yeah, I get it.
but there's only so much I can do. But you're right. There's a whole market that people just don't know how to market to, and they also seem reluctant to put the resources behind learning how to do that.
Yeah.